Hey guys, it's Stephanie here, and I wanted to talk with you tonight about if you are a trainer or a facilitator. So wherever you work, if you facilitate, co-facilitate, do workshops or trainings, and I want to tell you some things because where I work, I do several trainings. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker in an elementary school, and within the district, I do a variety of different trainings. And I want to just talk about some things that I've learned and some things that I think are really helpful if you are a facilitator, some things that might help you with your trainings. Because when we do a training, it's really important that we're empowering people, it's impactful, and that we have their attention so they can learn the information that we are teaching them. And of course, it doesn't matter where you work. Oftentimes, we don't have a choice and we have to go to mandatory trainings, and oftentimes we feel like we don't want to be there and we just want to go home, but we have to do that. So if you're a facilitator, you really you want your audience to come, you want them to be jazzed up, and you want to teach them something, right? And that's why you do it. So I'm going to tell you some things that I do that I think are really helpful. So one thing that you need to think about is that when you're doing a training, the information needs to be relevant. Okay? So it needs to be relevant to the staff. How is it going to help them? Why are they there? Why should they be listening? How is it going to make them better at their work? Or how is it going to enhance their life in some way? So you really want to kind of get that message right at the front end of your training. So, I go over the agenda, and I'm really passionate about the trainings that I do. And so I try to front load that right in the beginning about what we're going to be learning and why it's so important, and how excited I am to be able to offer this information because it's really going to benefit the audience, right? So I want them to be going, I wonder, okay, I think I'll listen to her. So I want them to be mindful right from the beginning and kind of let go everything else that's going on in their head so they can, so they can learn the information that I'm providing them. So I think that's really important. I would communicate that relevancy right in the beginning. So another thing that you need to consider is you gotta have good content. So what do I mean by that? Well, you want to have up-to-date information. And how are you presenting that? So you want to make sure that that content is good, and please provide handouts, whether it's your PowerPoint or whatnot, but provide people with handouts. That's super important because they can take it with them, and they can review that information, and they can be looking at it as you're talking as well. So have good content and take time to do your research and get the latest information. You want to do that. So I do that, and then I think about where the training is, and I want to ensure that staff feels comfortable. That's not only physically comfortable, but I want them to feel safe, to feel like it's a safe and welcoming environment, and that they can ask questions, they can talk about their concerns, that it's important that I hear from them what they're thinking. I think that's all super important to consider the environment. So, for example, when I'm doing a training, I really don't have any say about where the training is going to be or how many people are going to be at the training. I'm just told that, and then I got to work with it. So, for example, I may be doing, I'm doing a lot of self-care trainings. Well, it's not just one training, it may be the same content with a variety of different groups of people and sizes. So, for example, I did a self-care training with like 200 people. And I'm going to be doing the same training with only 30 people. Well, of course, for me, I like the smaller environment for a variety of different reasons. So I'm presenting the same content, but the environment is different. So I need to know ahead of time how many people I'm training, who am I training, and where am I? What does that room look like? And how many people? And I need to know that, because even though it's the same content, I may alter and change how I'm delivering that content to suit that environment. So it means I need to know ahead of time, and I might need to get creative. And I am not going to present the same way to 200 people as I'm going to present to 30 people. So you need to do your due diligence, and you need to be prepared. So you got to think about those types of things. And when it comes to your content, make sure you know your content. You need to be the expert. Be prepared. Make sure you're prepared, and make sure you know your content. You don't want to be tripping up over your words. You don't want to be second guessing yourself. That's what they're expecting, and they're going to know. They're going to know if you're prepared, and they're going to know if you know your content. And if you don't, they're not going to have any buy-in. They're going to start to tune out. You don't want that. So if you're going to be a facilitator, these are the things that you really need to consider. And do you have the time to be putting into a really good, solid training? Most people who are trainers, they just love doing it. I'm super passionate about it, and I love doing it. It is certainly not about the money that I receive for doing it. I want to give back. And so I'm super passionate about it, so I make sure that I'm well prepared and that I know my content inside and out. So, do your due diligence, like I said. The other thing is, think about how you're teaching the material, and remember that people learn in different ways. So don't just stand up there with a PowerPoint and be reading your slides. Actually, I would say 100% don't do that. If you have a PowerPoint and that's all you're going to be doing for your training, people are going to fall asleep, and they are going to have no buy-in, and they're going to virtually learn nothing. So do not do that. I'm not saying don't use a PowerPoint, but if you use PowerPoint, you might just have a few slides, and you might just have some bullets, so it's just kind of, it's giving the highlights of what you're talking about. I would say if you have a PowerPoint, all you're going to be doing is reading off the PowerPoint, I would take it away altogether. Okay, that's just going to be a training, and I've been to many trainings like that. So it's just a super downer. So you're going to have to get creative if that's how you're preparing your trainings. So when I'm doing a training, sometimes I use a PowerPoint, or I might use a short video clip, but most of the time I'm using. So I have activities. So I'm teaching something, and then we're stepping back from that, and then I'm having people do activities to process the information that they're learning and to make it relevant to what they're doing in their work. And then we're having conversation and dialogue and questions. It's a really nice way to get people engaged in the training, and it's a really, really good way to get people to really start thinking about what you're teaching them. So I'd highly recommend that, because that has been very successful, and people really like that. So I do that. I tell a lot of stories, and I try to add humor in my trainings, because humor is always going to work, and telling stories, people love that. So I try to make my stories personal and relevant to the work that I do. So yeah, I tell them stories, and I talk about mistakes that I made and kind of how I corrected that. And I do that a lot, because I think it's really important for people to understand that, well, I'm just a human being and I make mistakes. I'm just like you. I have a lot to learn. And they appreciate that. And then sometimes, they're able to then tell a story. I think stories are, super impactful. I mean, they're inspirational. People typically like that. So those are some of the things that I do to increase the likelihood that staff is going to be engaged and jazzed up about what they're learning, and it actually works really well. The last thing I would say is that if you are a facilitator or a trainer, that you should be leaving time at the end for staff to be able to complete a satisfaction survey. And if you're not doing that, I don't know why you wouldn't. Because a satisfaction survey is going to provide you with feedback. So it's going to tell you what's working really well for people, and it's going to also let you know what they didn't like or what didn't work very well. So that feedback for me is super important because I want to, I just want to continue to provide good trainings and better trainings, and I want to hear from people what they liked and what they didn't like, so I can kind of fix that and I can grow as a facilitator. Also on that survey, I ask staff to provide information on different types of trainings that they'd like to have, and actually this is how the self-care training came about, because on those surveys a good majority of people were asking for that type of training. So now I'm coming back and I'm providing a training that they asked for, so they also feel heard and they feel supported, which means when I go in there to do that training that they asked for, they're going to be more in tune and they're going to be more excited about learning the information. So those are just some of the things that I do that I find really helpful as a facilitator. And so if you are a facilitator or you're thinking about it, if you're thinking about it, I'd say jump in, take a risk, do it. Okay, it's a way to give back. And I think that's really important. So I hope you found this helpful. And if you did, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe, because I'm going to be providing you with all kinds of trainings, and not trainings, all kinds of videos, and I don't want you to miss anything. So I hope that you remember to be kind, and until next time.